The Lunga Perimeter, October 23, 1942. A humid, cloying darkness presses down on the Lunga Perimeter, Guadalcanal. The air, thick with the scent of decaying jungle and dread, is a breeding ground for malaria-carrying mosquitoes and unseen terrors. For the men of the 1st Marine Division, this sliver of coastline, this hard-won patch of dirt and palm trees, is the entire world. At its heart lies the prize, Henderson Field. Private First Class Gene Sledge of the 1st Marines grips the stock of his M1 Garand, knuckles white. Every rustle of a palm frond, every unfamiliar cry of a nightbird sends a jolt through his exhausted frame. They've held this perimeter since August, a lifetime ago. They had seized the unfinished Japanese airstrip with surprising ease, but holding it has been a descent into a special kind of hell. The Navy had been forced to withdraw most of its support after a disastrous encounter with the Japanese fleet at the Battle of Savo Island, leaving the Marines undersupplied and cut off. Their diet is a monotonous rotation of captured Japanese rice, often infested with maggots and worms. Weight loss is rampant. Men who were already lean from the Great Depression have become gaunt specters, their uniforms hanging loose. Dysentery and other tropical diseases are as constant a threat as the enemy. The Japanese, however, are far from defeated. They call this place the Island of Death, and they are determined to make it so for the Americans. Nightly, the destroyers of the Tokyo Express steam down the slot, landing reinforcements and bombarding the Marine positions. The shelling is a nightly ritual of terror, the whistle of incoming rounds, the concussive blasts that shake the very earth, the screams of men you can't see. The Marines have a name for the unseen tormentor who lobs shells from the hills. Pistol Pete. Major General Alexander Vandegrift, commander of the 1st Marine Division, knows his men are stretched to the breaking point. They have repelled ferocious assaults before at the Tenarue River, and on a grassy ridgeline that would forever be known as Bloody Ridge or Edson's Ridge. In those battles, Marines under men like Lieutenant Colonel Merritt Red Mike Edson had fought with near-suicidal bravery, holding off waves of attackers from the elite Japanese Kawaguchi Brigade. But the Japanese keep coming. Imperial General Headquarters has assigned the 17th Army under Lieutenant General Harukichi Hyakutake the singular task of retaking Guadalcanal. Between October 1st and 17th, convoys have landed 15,000 fresh troops, including the remainder of the veteran 2nd Sendai Division, known for its tenacity and marching prowess. With them came artillery, tanks, and General Hyakutake himself, ready to personally lead the final decisive offensive. The plan is ambitious. While one force fixes the Marines along the coast, the main body, under Colonel Masao Maruyama, will execute a grueling, clandestine march through the supposedly impassable jungle to strike the soft underbelly of the perimeter, the southern flank guarding Henderson Field. It is a sector defended by a single understrength battalion, the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines. Their commander is a gruff, barrel-chested man who is already a legend in the Corps, Lieutenant Colonel Louis B. Chesty Puller. The weight of the entire Guadalcanal campaign is about to fall on the shoulders of his 700 Marines. As the night of the 23rd deepens, the familiar, terrifying sound of Japanese naval guns echoes across Iron Bottom Sound. But tonight, it is a prelude. The ground itself begins to tremble, not from naval shells, but from the rumble of engines. Out of the darkness, Japanese tanks of the 1st Independent Tank Company lurch towards the Marine lines at the mouth of the Matanico River. The final push to annihilate the defenders of Henderson Field has begun. The diversion at the Matanico, the clatter of steel treads and the high-revving whine of diesel engines cut through the cacophony of the jungle night. Along the western edge of the perimeter, where the Matanico River empties into Iron Bottom Sound, Marines squint into the gloom. The ground assault is coming, but not from the direction they had anticipated for weeks. General Hyakutake's plan begins with a feint, a powerful diversionary attack designed to draw American attention and reserves to the coast, away from the true southern objective. For the men on the receiving end, the distinction between a feint and a full-scale assault is meaningless. 9 Type 95. Heigo light tanks, commanded by Colonel Nomazu Nakaguma, spearhead the charge, churning through the sandbar at the river's mouth. They are to be supported by Colonel Tadashi Sumiyoshi's 4th Infantry Regiment. The plan is brutally simple. Punch through the American lines, turn east, and roll up the perimeter. In the foxholes and gun pits, the Marines of the 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines and 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines wait. Their hearts hammer against their ribs. The tanks are a new and terrifying sight on this island, but they are ready. The word comes down the line, passed from man to man in strained whispers. Wait for the canister. Marine artillerymen have pre-sighted the sandbar. More importantly, dug in and waiting in the dark are gun crews with 37mm anti-tank guns. These small wheeled cannons had been a source of frustration, their high-explosive shells proving ineffective against Japanese bunkers. But tonight they are loaded with canister shot, essentially turning them into giant shotguns. The lead tank lurches across the sandbar, its turret-mounted 37mm gun spitting fire. The Marines hold their breath. The moment hangs, suspended in the humid air. Then the order is given. The American 37mm guns erupt with a deafening roar. A wall of metal slugs rips through the darkness, shredding the thin armor of the lead Heigo tank. It grinds to a halt, flames erupting from its hatches. A second tank follows, and a third, each met with the same devastating volley. The wreckage creates a barrier, forcing the following tanks to maneuver into the surf, where the churning water and soft sand bog them down. They become easy targets. Behind the tanks, Japanese infantry charge forward, screaming "Banzai!" They are met by a disciplined storm of fire from M1 rifles, Browning automatic rifles, and the steady, rhythmic thumping of water-cooled .30 caliber machine guns. The interlocking fields of fire are devastating. Entire waves of men are cut down before they can even reach the American side of the river. The water turns red. Yet, they keep coming. The fanaticism of the Japanese soldier is something the Marines have witnessed before, but it never ceases to be unnerving. They surge forward over the bodies of their comrades, driven by a belief in the divinity of their emperor and the shame of surrender. But bravery alone cannot overcome prepared positions and overwhelming firepower. Marine artillery joins the fray, 105mm howitzers walking shells across the Japanese assembly areas, turning their attack into a charnel house. By dawn, the attack has been utterly shattered. The sandbar at the mouth of the Matanikau is a grim tableau of smoking tank hulks and sprawled bodies. Colonel Nakaguma and nearly 650 of his men are dead. The diversion has failed at a catastrophic cost, but it has served one unintended purpose. It is confirmed to the American command that a major Japanese offensive is underway. The question is, was that the main event or merely the opening act? South of the airfield in the suffocating jungle, Colonel Masao Maruyama and 5,600 men of the Sendai Division are struggling through the mud and vines, hopelessly behind schedule. Their surprise assault on Chesty Puller's sector, planned for this very night, has not even begun. They are exhausted, hungry, and lost, but they are still coming. The southern flank, October 24th, 1942. A torrential downpour hammers Guadalcanal. The world is reduced to a churning sea of mud and water. For the men of the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, strung out along a 2,000-yard front south of Henderson Field, the rain is both a misery and a blessing. It soaks them to the bone, turns their foxholes into cold, soupy ditches, and makes a hot meal an impossible luxury. But it also cloaks the jungle in a thick gray curtain, muffling sound and movement. They are waiting. They just don't know for what. Lieutenant Colonel Chesty Puller slogs through the mud, his poncho doing little to ward off the deluge. His face, a mask of grim determination, is set. He moves from position to position, his presence a tangible thing. He stops at a machine gun nest, manned by 2 shivering, gaunt Marines. "Everything all right here?" he barks over the roar of the rain. "Yes, sir," comes the reply. the young Marine trying to sound more confident than he feels. Puller nods. Good. Keep your eyes peeled. They're out there. He doesn't need to elaborate. Every man knows it. Puller's battalion is dangerously understrength, numbering only about 700 men. Their line is a thin, uneven cord stretched across a series of low ridges and swampy draws. To his right flank is another understrength unit, the 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. To his left, a welcome reinforcement has arrived just days before. The U.S. Army's 3rd Battalion, 164th Infantry Regiment, fresh off the transports. They are green, untested National Guardsmen from North Dakota, and the veteran Marines view them with skepticism. Tonight, that skepticism will be put to the ultimate test. Miles away, in the deep, trackless jungle, Lieutenant General Maruyama is in a state of controlled fury. The march that was meant to be a swift 2-day flanking maneuver has turned into a 4-day death march. His Sendai division, famed for its endurance, is in tatters. Men, weakened by hunger and dysentery, have collapsed and been left to die on the trail. Heavy equipment artillery pieces, mortars, heavy machine guns has been abandoned, swallowed by the insatiable mud. The dense jungle canopy has disoriented his veteran officers, scattering his units. They were supposed to attack last night in concert with the tanks at the Matanikau. Now, a full day late, they are finally, painfully stumbling into their attack positions. They are exhausted, starving, and stripped of their heaviest firepower. But their fighting spirit, honed by years of war in China, remains dangerously intact. As darkness falls, the rain slackens to a miserable drizzle. An unnatural quiet descends upon the perimeter, broken only by the drip of water from helmet brims and the squelch of boots in mud. The tension is a physical coil in the stomachs of the defenders. Every man is listening, straining to hear something. Anything beyond the jungle's deceptive chorus. Suddenly, around 10:06 p.m., it begins. Not with a massive artillery barrage, the guns for that are rusting miles back on the jungle trail. It starts with a series of sharp cracks. Japanese riflemen, skilled infiltrators, begin picking at the forward listening posts. Then, from the darkness, comes a sound that chills the blood. Bugle calls, shrill and alien, echoing through the wet trees. Officers shout commands in a language the Marines don't understand, but whose intent is unmistakable. Then they come. Not in a neat, orderly wave, but as a horde of ghostly figures emerging from the jungle's edge. They surge forward, bayonets fixed, screaming, "Gasoline! Marine, you die! Banzai!" They slam into the barbed wire strung in front of the Marine positions. The American machine guns, carefully sighted for interlocking fields of fire, open up. The steady, brutal chatter of the Browning M19 and A-17s tears into the attacking formations. The night erupts into a bedlam of muzzle flashes, screams, and the thud of bodies hitting the mud. Colonel Maruyama has thrown his left wing, the 29th Infantry Regiment, directly at Chesty Puller's battalion. The battle for Henderson Field has reached its bloody climax. Section 5, the soldiers arrive. The brief lull in the fighting is more terrifying than the assault itself. In the darkness, the Marines can hear the Japanese moving, regrouping. Wounded men cry out in Japanese and English. The air is heavy with the coppery scent of blood. For the survivors of Puller's battalion, the equation is terrifyingly simple. They are running out of ammunition faster than the enemy is running out of men. The wooden crates of .30 caliber rounds are nearly empty. Men are down to their last few clips, their last couple of grenades. The machine guns, their barrels glowing a dull red, have only a few belts left. They have paid in blood for every inch of this muddy ground, but they know they cannot withstand another concerted push. Word of the crisis has reached Major General Vandegrift at his command post. The ferocity of the southern attack has made it clear. This is the main event. The coastal feint at the Matanikau was a distraction. The entire Guadalcanal Campaign now hinges on the 700 men of the 17 and their ability to hold a 2,000-yard line. A breakthrough here would mean the Japanese would swarm onto Henderson Field from the south, splitting the American perimeter and slaughtering the pilots and support crews of the Cactus Air Force. The island, and perhaps the war in the South Pacific, would be lost. There is only one available reserve, the 3rd Battalion, 164th Infantry Regiment. Colonel Bryant Moore, the Army Regiment's commander, receives the order to move his men into Puller's sector. The National Guardsmen from North Dakota, who had landed on the island less than 2 weeks ago, rise from their muddy foxholes. For them, the war until this point has been a miserable ordeal of nightly bombardments and jungle patrols. Now they are being thrown directly into the meat grinder. They move forward in the pitch black, guided by Marine runners. The journey is a nightmare. They stumble in single file through ankle-deep mud, past the rear aid stations where surgeons work by flashlight, the ground slick with blood. The wounded stream past them in the opposite direction, specters with bandaged heads and makeshift slings, their eyes wide with the horror they have just witnessed. The roar of the battle grows louder with every step, a constant, visceral thunder that seems to shake the very air they breathe. They arrive at Puller's command post, a shallow hole in the ground. Puller, a Marines Marine who harbored the institutional skepticism of Army capabilities, wastes no time. He meets Lieutenant Colonel Robert Hall, the battalion commander, and gives a brutally direct order. "You're moving in with my men. Shove your people in any hole you can find. Fill the gaps. We're holding this line, no matter what." There is no time for ceremony. The soldiers are fed directly into the front line. A Marine with a haunted look in his eyes grabs a soldier's arm and shoves him into his foxhole. "Get in here, they're coming back!" In the suffocating intimacy of the fighting positions, the distinction between Marine and soldier evaporates, replaced by the shared identity of American fighting men facing annihilation. They share ammunition, canteens of water, and grim assurances. Just as the line is bolstered, the Japanese come again. Bugles blare once more. Major General Yumio Nasu, leading Maruyama's right-wing force, throws his men forward in a final, desperate banzai charge. This time, they are met with a renewed and strengthened volume of fire. The M1 Garands of the 164th, firing a full 8-round clip to the 5-round capacity of the Marines' older Springfield rifles, add a new and terrible rhythm to the chorus of defense. The soldiers, despite their inexperience, hold their ground with grim tenacity. They fire, reload, and throw grenades, their farm boy faces illuminated by the muzzle flashes. They see the man to their left is a Marine, the man to their right is a soldier, and all that matters is the enemy in front of them. The line sags and groans under the immense pressure, but this time, it does not yield. The fusion of Marine grit and Army firepower has turned the tide, the gray light of dawn. October 25th, 1942. Dawn breaks over Guadalcanal, not with the warm glow of a tropical sunrise, but with a sickly gray luminescence that filters through the bruised-looking clouds. The rain has finally ceased, leaving behind a world saturated and dripping. As the light spreads across the southern perimeter, it reveals a scene of almost unimaginable horror. The ground in front of the American line is not brown mud, but a carpet of khaki and olive green, the uniforms of the Japanese dead. They are everywhere, piled 3 and 4 deep against the barbed wire, their bodies contorted in the final agonies of death. They lay in heaps around the machine gun positions they had so desperately tried to silence. The shallow draws and creeks are choked with them. The Marines and soldiers, haggard and hollow-eyed, stare out from their foxholes in a state of numb disbelief. The adrenaline that had sustained them through the long night has evaporated, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion and the nauseating, sweet smell of blood. They had known they were killing, but they could not have comprehended the sheer scale of the slaughter until now. Stretcher bearers move carefully through the lines, their boots making sucking sounds in the mud, as they collect the American wounded and dead. The cost has been heavy. Puller's battalion and the Army's 164th have suffered grievously. But they have held. The sight of the American flag still flying over Henderson Field in the distance is the only thing that seems real. Miles back in the jungle, what remains of Colonel Maruyama's force is in a state of complete collapse. The proud Sendai Division has been effectively destroyed. Survivors, shocked and leaderless, stumble back toward the coast, abandoning their weapons and what little equipment they have left. But their ordeal is not over. With the dawn comes the sound that the Japanese on Guadalcanal have come to dread more than any other: the roar of radial engines. From the runway that so much blood has been spilt to defend, the Cactus Air Force takes to the skies. Grumman F-4F Wildcats and Douglas SBD. Dauntless dive bombers climb into the morning air, their pilots scanning the jungle canopy below. They are the cavalry. The Marines and soldiers held the fort. Now the planes would wreak havoc on the retreating enemy. Spotting the disorganized columns of Japanese soldiers, the Wildcats roll in, their 650 caliber machine guns ripping through the trees, turning the jungle trails into killing zones. The dauntless dive bombers follow, their 500-pound bombs sending geysers of mud, foliage, and bodies into the air. For the Japanese soldiers who had survived the hell of the perimeter, there is now no escape. The very prize they had failed to capture was now being used as the instrument of their destruction. Despite the carnage, Lieutenant General Hyakutake, isolated at his command post, refuses to believe his offensive has failed. That night, on October 25th, he orders the remnants of his forces to launch another assault. It is a shadow of the previous night's fury. Small, uncoordinated groups of Japanese soldiers, driven forward by a suicidal sense of duty, charge the American lines. They are met by a disciplined and now well-supplied wall of fire. The attacks are broken up with methodical, brutal efficiency. By the morning of the 26th, it is over. The great Japanese offensive to retake Henderson Field has been utterly and catastrophically defeated. More than 1,500 Japanese soldiers lay dead around the perimeter, held by Puller and Hall's men. The battle that would become known as the Battle for Henderson Field was won. Section 7. The Unsinkable Aircraft Carrier. The victory was total, but its true significance was not yet understood by the exhausted men cleaning their rifles in the gray morning light. The battle for Henderson Field was more than just another brutal, costly engagement. It was the hinge upon which the entire Pacific War would turn. The Japanese had thrown their best infantry, their veteran Sendai Division, against the Marine perimeter and had been annihilated. It was the last major ground offensive they would be able to mount on Guadalcanal. Having failed to retake the airfield, they were now locked in a battle of attrition they could not win. For their actions during the ferocious fighting on the night of October 24th and 25th, Lieutenant Colonel Chesty Puller would be awarded his 3rd Navy Cross. Sergeant John Basilone, for his incredible heroism in manning his machine guns, fighting his way through enemy lines for ammunition, and holding his position against impossible odds, would be awarded the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest decoration for valor. He became a living legend, a symbol of the unyielding spirit of the defenders. But the battle's impact resonated far beyond individual heroism. Henderson Field was now secure. It was, in effect, an unsinkable aircraft carrier parked directly on the flank of Japan's southern empire. From its repaired runways, the Cactus Air Force could now dominate the skies and the surrounding sea lanes during the day. The Tokyo Express, the nightly runs of Japanese warships bringing meager supplies and reinforcements, became even more perilous. The ability of the Japanese to sustain their remaining troops on the island was crippled. In the weeks that followed, the Americans went on the offensive. The naval battle of Guadalcanal in mid-November would see Allied naval and air forces turn back Japan's final, desperate attempt to bombard the airfield and land a major reinforcement convoy. This decisive naval victory, combined with the unbreakable defense of the airfield on land, sealed the fate of the Japanese on the island. Starvation and disease would now do what bullets and bayonets could not. In February 1943, the Japanese High Command, conceding defeat, evacuated their remaining skeletal forces under the cover of darkness. The fight for Guadalcanal, and specifically for Henderson Field, was the first time the Allies had seized territory from the Japanese and held it. It shattered the myth of Japanese invincibility and marked the definitive end of their expansion in the Pacific. From this hard-won, blood-soaked island, the Great American Island Hopping Campaign would be launched, a relentless drive across the Pacific that would ultimately lead to the shores of Japan itself. The Marines and soldiers who held the line during those desperate October nights did not just save an airfield, they saved the campaign, they shifted the momentum of the war, and they forged a legacy of tenacity and courage against which all future battles would be measured. They held the line with their last ounce of strength, and in doing so, they turned the tide of the war. Thank you for watching.